She said, "Your wife is cheating with my husband." Then she asked me out on a date. But her real motive shocked me. So I'm sitting in this coffee shop called Blue Sparrow on a completely ordinary Tuesday morning, scrolling through my phone and waiting for my order, when this woman I've never seen before slides into the chair across from me like we're old friends meeting for brunch. She's dressed in this expensive-looking navy blazer and white blouse, the kind of outfit that screams corporate executive, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail, and she's got this manila folder in her hands that she places on the table between us with the kind of deliberate care that makes my stomach drop before she even opens her mouth. She looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Your wife Alyssa is cheating with my husband Brandon." And I swear to God, my first thought is that this is some kind of prank, like maybe I'm on one of those YouTube shows where they mess with random people. But then she opens that folder and starts laying out photos on the table, and suddenly I can't breathe. There's my wife Alyssa, the woman I've been married to for 4 years, holding hands with some guy in what looks like a restaurant, kissing him outside a building I don't recognize, walking into what the timestamp shows as a condo in the middle of the afternoon on a day she told me she had back-to-back client meetings. The woman introduces herself as Victoria Wells, but tells me to call her Vic, and she's got this calm, controlled energy that's somehow more terrifying than if she was crying or screaming, like she's already processed her emotions and moved straight to strategic planning. She slides receipts across the table, hotel charges, restaurant bills, even security camera timestamps from some building called Colorado Condos, and every piece of evidence lines up perfectly with days Alyssa told me she was working late or meeting clients or attending networking events. I need to back up for a second because 12 hours before this coffee shop moment, I was lying in bed next to Alyssa thinking everything was fine, or at least that's what I was telling myself. We'd been going through what I thought was just a normal rough patch. You know, the kind where your spouse seems distracted and busy and maybe not as affectionate as usual, but you chalk it up to work stress, because that's easier than considering the alternatives. Alyssa works in advertising at this big agency downtown. She's always had demanding clients and crazy deadlines, and lately she'd been staying late at the office at least 3 nights a week, sometimes coming home after I was already asleep. I work as a software developer with pretty regular 9 to 5 hours, so I'd gotten used to eating dinner alone, falling asleep to whatever show I was binge-watching, waking up to find her already gone to an early meeting. There was this voice in the back of my head telling me something felt off, that she seemed happier texting on her phone than talking to me. But I kept pushing it down because confronting it meant potentially destroying everything we'd built together. Then at 2:47 in the morning, I wake up to use the bathroom, and I see her phone light up on the nightstand with a text notification, and normally I would never look, but something made me glance at the screen, and there it is, a message that says, "Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. You make me feel alive. B." And my entire world just stops. I stand there in the dark bathroom for probably 20 minutes trying to convince myself there's some innocent explanation. Maybe it's a friend playing a joke or literally anything other than what I know deep down it actually means. I can't fall back asleep. I just lie there next to her listening to her breathe peacefully while my mind races through every interaction we've had over the past few months, suddenly seeing all these signs I'd missed or ignored. The next morning after Alyssa leaves for work, I do something I never thought I'd do, and I go through our credit card statements, our bank accounts, her calendar, anything I can access without her password. I create this Excel spreadsheet and start cross-referencing dates and times. Matching up the nights, she said she was working late with charges at restaurants across town, hotel bookings on days she claimed to be at conferences, gaps in her location sharing that I'd previously explained away as her being in meetings. Every piece of data points to the same conclusion, and I feel like I'm becoming this paranoid detective in my own marriage, but the evidence is overwhelming. That's when I get a text from an unknown number asking me to meet at Blue Sparrow Coffee Shop, saying it's urgent and about Alyssa. And even though every true crime podcast I've ever listened to says this is how people get murdered, I go anyway because I need to know what's happening. Which brings us back to Victoria Wells sitting across from me showing me proof that my wife has been having an affair with her husband Brandon for what she estimates is at least 3 months based on the evidence she's collected. Vic tells me she hired a private investigator 4 weeks ago after finding suspicious charges on their shared credit card, and that investigator has documented at least 15 separate meetings between Alyssa and Brandon, including regular visits to a condo that Brandon apparently rents through his company supposedly for visiting executives, but actually uses for his affairs, because apparently this isn't his first time cheating. She's got photos, video, GPS data, Everything laid out in this folder like she's presenting evidence to a jury, and she tells me she found out my name by confronting Brandon 2 days ago and demanding he tell her everything about this woman he's been seeing. Brandon, apparently, is some big shot CEO at a tech company, married to Vic for 12 years with 2 kids, and according to what he finally admitted to her, he and Alyssa met at some industry networking event and started out as friends before it turned into something more, and now they're supposedly in love and talking about leaving their spouses to be together. I'm trying to process all of this while my coffee gets cold and the morning rush flows around us. And Vic just watches me with this expression that's equal parts sympathy and determination. She slides one more thing across the table, a USB drive, and she says, "I don't want chaos. I want justice. Let's work together on this." And I realize this isn't just a courtesy meeting to inform me about the affair. This is a recruitment pitch. She explains that she's been planning her approach carefully, that she doesn't want to just confront them and have them deny everything or make excuses. She wants to gather enough evidence that they can't talk their way out of it, evidence that will have real consequences for both of them professionally and personally. The USB drive, she tells me, contains software that can monitor computer activity, keystrokes, browsing history, everything I'd need to document exactly what Alyssa has been doing behind my back. Vic leans forward and tells me that Brandon has been using company resources to facilitate this affair, booking the condo through his corporate account, using business dinners as cover for their meetings, and she's already building a case to present to his board of directors. She asks me if I know whether Alyssa has been doing anything similar, falsifying work hours or using client meetings as alibis, and suddenly I'm thinking about all those late nights she claimed to be at the office, all those weekend work sessions that seemed excessive even for her demanding job. Vic slides a business card across the table with her personal cell number and says, "Think about it, but don't think too long. They're planning to meet tomorrow night." And then she's gone, leaving me sitting there with this folder of evidence, this USB drive, and the smoking remains of my marriage. I sit in that coffee shop for another hour, going through everything in the folder again, memorizing every photo, every receipt, every timestamp, feeling this cold clarity settling over me like ice water. When I finally leave and drive home, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to install that software. I'm going to gather every piece of evidence I can find, and I'm going to make sure that when this all comes crashing down, there's no way for Alyssa to claim it was just a mistake or a moment of weakness, because this wasn't a moment. This was hundreds of deliberate choices she made to betray me, and I'm going to document every one of them. That night after Alyssa comes home from another supposed late meeting, acting completely normal and asking me about my day like she's not actively destroying our marriage, I wait until she falls asleep, and then I take that USB drive into my home office and install the monitoring software on our shared desktop computer, the one Alyssa uses every morning to check her emails and work calendar before she leaves for the office. The software is incredibly sophisticated. It runs completely invisible in the background and captures keystrokes, emails, chat messages, website visits, everything. And within 48 hours, I have access to a level of detail about my wife's secret life that makes me physically sick to look at, but I force myself to read it all because I need to know the full truth. The messages between Alyssa and Brandon are worse than I imagined. They're not just hooking up, they're planning an entire future together, talking about which one of them should file for divorce first, discussing how they'll handle telling their families, even looking at apartments they could rent together in downtown Denver once they're both free. There are messages where Alyssa calls me boring and says she feels trapped in our marriage. Messages where Brandon talks about how his wife Vic is too focused on the kids and doesn't understand him anymore. All the classic affair cliches that I always thought were stupid excuses people made, but apparently they're exactly what cheaters tell themselves to justify their actions. But here's where it gets even worse. The software shows me that Alyssa has been falsifying her work hours on a massive scale, billing clients for time she was actually spending with Brandon, marking herself as in strategy meetings when the GPS data shows she was at Colorado condos, essentially committing timesheet fraud that could get her fired and potentially lose her professional license if her agency ever found out. I text Vic and tell her what I found, and she asks me to meet her again, this time at a bar on the opposite side of town from where either of us live. And when I get there, she's already got a bourbon waiting for me, which honestly I need after the week I've had. She tells me she's been doing her own digging into Brandon's finances and has discovered that he's been using company funds to pay for the condo rental, expensing dinners with Alyssa as business development meetings, basically using his position as CEO to fund his affair with corporate money. which is not just unethical, but potentially illegal depending on how the company's board wants to handle it. Vic has compiled everything into a detailed report with bank statements, credit card receipts, calendar entries, and she's planning to present it to the board of directors at a special meeting she's demanding they hold. And she wants to know if I'm willing to do something similar with the evidence against Alyssa by reporting her timesheet fraud to her agency's ethics committee. I'm sitting there swirling my bourbon and thinking about how 3 weeks ago my biggest worry was whether we needed to refinance our mortgage, and now I'm planning to potentially destroy my wife's entire career. But then I think about all those messages where she called me boring and talked about how much happier she was with Brandon, and suddenly I don't feel conflicted anymore. I feel crystal clear about what needs to happen. Vic starts talking about something she calls Operation Consequences, which sounds dramatic, but is basically just a coordinated plan to expose both Brandon and Alyssa at the same time in a way that maximizes the professional and personal fallout for both of them, hitting them when they're most vulnerable and least expecting it. The plan is this. We wait until their next scheduled meetup at Colorado Condos, which according to their messages is happening in 3 days. Vic will submit her report to Brandon's board that morning, triggering an emergency executive session. I'll file a formal complaint with Alyssa's agency ethics committee with all the timesheet evidence. And then while they think they're safe in their little love nest, we both show up and confront them with the fact that their entire lives are currently imploding. It sounds insane when she lays it out like that, but there's something about the precision of it, the way she's thought through every detail and contingency, that makes me feel like maybe this is exactly what needs to happen, not out of revenge, but out of a need for accountability, for them to face real consequences for their choices instead of just getting to walk away and start over like nothing happened. Vic shows me text messages where Brandon has been love-bombing her, suddenly being attentive and affectionate and buying her flowers, which she realizes is guilt behavior because he knows he's about to leave her and he's trying to ease his own conscience by being temporarily nice. And it makes me think about how Alyssa suggested last week that we should book a weekend trip together, probably doing the same thing, trying to assuage her guilt with performative gestures of affection. We spend the next 3 days in constant communication, Vic and I, texting back and forth as we finalize every detail of the plan, and somewhere in all of this I realize she's become the only person I can actually talk to about what I'm going through because she's the only one who truly understands. She's living the exact same nightmare from the exact same betrayal. The night before D-Day, Alyssa tells me she has an important client dinner that's going to run late, and she probably won't be home until after midnight. And I just nod and say that's fine. Go ahead, have fun, and she kisses me on the cheek like Judas kissing Jesus and heads out the door without a clue about what's coming. I text Vic, she just left, are you ready? And she responds, board meeting starts at 9 a.m. Ethics complaint filed. I'll meet you at the condo at 8 p.m. And I feel this strange calm wash over me like the moment before a storm breaks. I show up at Colorado Condos at 7:45, 15 minutes early, and I sit in my car in the parking garage watching the entrance and thinking about how many times Alyssa has walked through those doors thinking she was getting away with everything, thinking I was too trusting or too stupid to ever figure it out. At exactly 8 p.m., I see Brandon's car pull in, expensive black Mercedes that screams tech CEO, and I watch him park and head toward the elevator, and I give him 5 minutes to get settled before I follow. I take the elevator to the 4th floor, find unit 412, which I know from the security footage timestamps, and I just stand outside the door for a minute listening to music playing inside and wondering if I'm really about to do this. And then I think about that text message that started all of this. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. And I knock on the door. I hear movement inside, voices, then footsteps approaching, and the door opens, and there's Alyssa in this elegant black dress I've never seen before, her hair done up fancy, a smile on her face that immediately dies when she sees it's me standing there instead of Brandon, and for a split second I see pure panic flash across her face before she tries to recover and act confused, saying, Cole, what are you doing here? I'm at a client dinner. Even though we both know that lie just evaporated the moment she opened the door dressed like that. I walk past her into the condo without waiting for an invitation, and there's Brandon standing in the living room with 2 glasses of wine, wearing an expensive suit with the tie loosened, and the look on his face when he sees me is almost worth all the pain of the past few weeks, pure deer-in-headlights terror mixed with the realization that his entire carefully constructed secret life just collapsed in an instant. I pull out the folder I've been carrying, the same kind of manila folder Vic showed me 3 weeks ago, except this one is mine, filled with printed screenshots of every message, every falsified timesheet, every lie Alyssa has told over the past 3 months. And I drop it on the coffee table between us with a heavy thud that seems to echo in the sudden silence. Alyssa tries to speak, starts with Cole. I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. But I cut her off and just start listing facts. The dates, the times, the hotels, the restaurants, the messages where she called our marriage boring, the timesheet entries where she billed clients for hours she spent in this exact condo. And I watch her face go from panic to resignation as she realizes there's no way to talk her way out of this because I have everything documented. Brandon finally finds his voice and asks how I found out. And I tell him about Vic, the private investigator, the monitoring software, operation consequences, and then I deliver the real bombshell. That at 9 o'clock this morning his board of directors received a comprehensive report detailing his use of company funds to facilitate this affair, and that Alyssa's ethics committee has been reviewing her falsified timesheets since yesterday afternoon. The color drains from both their faces as they realize this isn't just their marriage's ending. This is their entire careers potentially being destroyed, and Alyssa actually stumbles backward and sits down on the couch like her legs won't hold her anymore. Brandon starts getting angry, asking what right I have to ruin his life. And I just laugh because the audacity of that question is almost impressive, like somehow I'm the villain in this story for exposing what they did rather than them being the villains for doing it in the first place. I tell them both that they made hundreds of conscious choices to betray their spouses, to lie, to steal from their employers, to build this relationship on a foundation of deception. And now they're facing the natural consequences, consequences that Vic and I didn't create. We just made sure they couldn't be avoided or explained away. Alyssa starts crying, asking me if I'm really going to let her lose everything over a mistake. And I tell her this wasn't a mistake. This was 3 months of deliberate decisions. This was you planning a future with him while lying to my face every day. And even as I say it, I'm surprised by how calm I sound. Like all the emotion has been burned out of me, and what's left is just this cold clarity. My phone buzzes, and it's a text from Vic saying, "Divorce papers filed. I'm done." And I show the message to Brandon and tell him his wife is officially leaving him. And then I look at Alyssa and tell her I want her moved out of our apartment by the end of the week, that I've already contacted a divorce attorney, that I'm keeping the apartment, and she can figure out her own living situation, preferably far away from me. Brandon tries to say something about how they didn't mean for it to happen like this, how they really do love each other. And I cut him off and say, then I guess you got what you wanted. You can be together now. You're both single and unemployed. Congratulations. And the sarcasm in my voice is sharp enough to cut. The next few weeks are a blur of paperwork and phone calls and dividing up belongings. Alyssa moves in with a friend from work and we barely speak except through our attorneys. And I find out through the legal discovery process that her agency did in fact terminate her employment after the ethics investigation confirmed the timesheet fraud. And she's currently facing a hearing that could result in losing her professional advertising license permanently. Brandon's situation is even worse. His board didn't just fire him. They're pursuing criminal charges for embezzlement and corporate fraud. And according to Vic, who I'm still in regular contact with, he's looking at potentially serious legal consequences that could include jail time, depending on how aggressive the DA wants to be. Part of me wonders if Vic and I went too far, if we let our hurt and anger push us into destroying two people's lives more thoroughly than necessary. But then I remember all those messages where they talked about us like we were just obstacles to overcome, where they laughed about how clueless we were, where they planned their future together without any apparent guilt about the families they were destroying. And I stopped feeling conflicted. Vic tells me that Brandon tried to reach out to her asking if she'd be willing to testify on his behalf at his hearing, help paint him as a good person who made a mistake, and she just laughed and blocked his number because the audacity of that request after everything he put her through is genuinely unbelievable. About 3 months after the confrontation at the condo, Vic asks me if I want to meet up for coffee, not to talk about our exes or the legal proceedings, but just to talk like normal people. And I realize that over the course of this nightmare, she's become one of the only people I feel comfortable being completely honest with because she understands exactly what I went through. We meet at a different cafe this time, nowhere near Blue Sparrow because that place has too many memories now. And we end up talking for 3 hours about everything except Brandon and Alyssa, about our jobs and our families, and what we want for our futures. And when we finally leave, I realize I'm smiling for the first time in months, and it feels genuine rather than forced. We start meeting regularly after that, once a week at first, and then more frequently. And it's nice to have someone who doesn't treat me like I'm broken or damaged, someone who gets that I'm processing a major betrayal, but doesn't define me entirely by it. Around 6 months after everything exploded, Brandon takes a plea deal that includes 2 years of probation, community service, and repaying the company for all the funds he misappropriated. His reputation in the tech industry is completely destroyed, and last I heard, he's working at some retail job, trying to pay his legal fees. Alyssa lost her license after the ethics hearing, couldn't find work in advertising anymore, and ended up moving back to her hometown in Oregon to stay with her parents while she figures out what to do next. And honestly, I don't feel much of anything about it anymore. Not satisfaction or anger or sadness, just a kind of neutral acceptance that this is how things played out. Vic and I have been officially dating for about 2 months now, and I know some people might think it's weird that we got together after everything that happened, but it actually makes perfect sense to us because we built our relationship on complete honesty from day one. There are no secrets between us, no hidden phones or mysterious late nights. Just two people who learned the hard way what betrayal looks like and decided to build something different. We're taking it slow. We're both still processing our divorces, and neither of us is in a rush to jump into anything too serious too fast. But it feels healthy and stable in a way my marriage to Alyssa never really did, even before I knew about Brandon. Someone on Reddit asked me recently if I thought what Vic and I did was revenge or justice. And honestly, I think it was just truth. We didn't fabricate anything or exaggerate anything. We just exposed the reality of what Brandon and Alyssa had done to their employers, families, and the legal system. And those institutions decided on their own what the consequences should be. Looking back now, I don't regret any of it. Not the investigation, not Operation Consequences, not even the dramatic confrontation at the condo, because the alternative would have been living in ignorance while my wife planned her exit strategy. And at least this way I got to control my own narrative rather than being blindsided when she finally decided to leave. So yeah, that's my story. Make of it what you will. And if you're reading this wondering if you should trust that gut feeling that something's wrong in your relationship, trust it, because that feeling exists for a reason, and ignoring it doesn't make the problem go away. It just means you find out later when the damage is worse. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.